Ah, La Ville de Lumiose, the city of light, the city of fashion. A city where a foreign conglomerate capitalized on a property market freefall to turn the central business district into a predator containment zone. A city where the working class are forced into a violent battle royale gig economy just to afford food, all while the local mafia are the only ones competent enough to prevent total infrastructure collapse. A city where the president of aforementioned foreign megacorp handed the keys to their entire company over to a 15-year-old with zero experience. Yeah, you heard all of that right. In this video, we're going to reach the disturbing conclusion that the Lumiose City of Pokemon Legends Zeta A isn't just suffering, it is categorically doomed to collapse beyond repair. G'day philosophers, my name is Jenna, and today we are mega evolving our economic theories to find out how Pokemon Legends Zeta A's redevelopment plan turned the City of Light forever into a City of Darkness. To understand the impending collapse on Lumiose City's economy, we must look back to the plot of Pokemon X and Y. Rewinding to just 5 years ago in game time, Lumiose City was the dazzling Paris of the Pokemon world, the Kalos region's thriving megapolis built on fashion, fine food and wonder. But when Team Flare triggered the activation of the ultimate weapon, the shockwave destabilized the Prism Tower. This awoke Anji, the dormant device inside Prism Tower, causing it to leak unstable mega power into the streets. There's a bit more to the story of Anji to say the least. In fact, the title Zeta A is widely interpreted to represent the two central figures of the story, Zygarde and Anji. But if you've never played Zeta A before, all you need to know is that the leaked mega power triggered Rogue Mega Evolution, a catastrophe where wild Pokemon spontaneously mutate into berserk, uncontrolled boss-level enemies. It also drew hordes of said wild Pokemon across Kalos right to the city for some reason. I guess the big leagues were calling, or rather the mega leagues. Anyway, the geopolitical crisis caused by the firing of the ultimate weapon was overshadowed only by the total collapse of the local real estate market. This isn't just speculation either. Jet, the CEO of Corsair, explicitly states that in the aftermath of the Team Flare incident 5 years ago, Lumiose was hemorrhaging people, and property values were in freefall. With rogue mega-evolved predators running rampant, the City of Light transformed from a global travel destination into a high-risk combat zone. Now Lumiose's only remaining draw, the single reason for a visitor to ever come here, is the Prism Tower. When the story of Zeta A kicks off, this tower has evolved from a city skyline icon to Lumiose's last beacon of hope. Faced with a textbook liquidity crisis and capital flight, the unseen mayor of the game desperately sought local partners to fund an urban redevelopment plan to stem the bleeding. Apparently, no local entity had the necessary capital or the risk appetite to take on a metropolis currently under siege by superpowered monsters. Enter Corsair Inc., the multinational company from abroad. This multinational organization swooped in to acquire the city's infrastructure monopoly when the asset was effectively uninsurable. Let's be clear, this wasn't a rescue mission, it was disaster capitalism. President Jet even admits that their urban redevelopment plan was actually a strategic cutoff for containment. They established wild zones using hard light holotech barriers, not to beautify the city, but to desperately cage the rogue mega evolution phenomenon caused by the very tower that once symbolized prosperity. Effectively, the desperate government handed the keys to their entire economy to a foreign megacorp to avoid total state failure. This isn't just a monopoly. It is a hostile takeover of a sovereign state's infrastructure. Corsair now sits at the top of the food chain, and to understand the depth of their control, we must examine how their presence in Lumiose distorts the specific sectors of the economy. With the infrastructure monopoly secured, the dominant industry in Lumiose City is now urban redevelopment, where Corsair Inc. employs a massive workforce to maintain the holotech barriers sealing off Wild Zone. Meanwhile, the domestic sector is currently suffering from severe allocative efficiency. Look at Racine Construction. They are burying the city's former beauty under miles of scaffolding, which the game explicitly tells us is designed to put fun in place of purpose. Yup. These dangerous construction sites are designed to double as obstacle courses for ordinary civilians. Just think about the insanity of that statement. In the middle of an infrastructure collapse, the primary construction firm is misallocating scarce labor into aesthetic fun rather than structural survival. This mismanagement starts at the top. Tarragon, the owner, has completely abdicated his fiduciary duty, ignoring the company's operations to obsess over his granddaughter's streaming career. He's not the only character in this game to follow this trend either, as you'll see later in this video. But this piece of evidence proves that the local private sector isn't just broke, it is distracted, frivolous, and dangerously incompetent. All of this instability has monetized violence through a new combat economy. The Zeta A Royale has transformed Pokemon battling from a sport into a desperate gig economy, where freelance trainers must fight for prize medals just to afford basic necessities like food. For the average citizen displaced by the crisis, battling is no longer a sport, it is a survival strategy organized into a rigid class system. Participants begin at the bottom, rank Z, and must scrape together ticket points by defeating others just to earn a challenger's ticket for a promotion match. This structure is brilliant predatory design. By dangling the promise of rank A, where Corsarico promises to grant one wish to the victor, the corporation keeps the desperate population trapped on a treadmill of violence. It is the ultimate lottery economy. The poor fight each other for a 1 in a million shot at a corporate bailout, while Corsarico extracts value from these people. Economically, the entire system operates on company script. The prize medals function as a proprietary currency, meaning Corsarico effectively acts as the central bank, controlling the money supply and purchasing power of the workforce. This creates a terrifying subsistence trap. NPCs explicitly state that they must win big just to afford basic food. This implies that official fiat currency has become so scarce that citizens are forced to barter in violence just to eat. Even the means of production are gatekept. Corsarico restricts mega rings to the top ranks, ensuring the most powerful tools are reserved for the elite. And let's talk about barriers to entry. Wealthy trainers can simply buy their way to victory using potions and revives, things that the working class just simply can't afford. It is a textbook example of the Matthew effect, a rigged system where the winners compound their advantages and the losers are mathematically eliminated. But the horror goes deeper than economics. We eventually learned that this tournament was never about entertainment. It was a recruitment drive conceived by AZ and Corsarico to identify a biological weapon, a trainer strong enough to wield Mega Evolution and suppress the Anji device inside Prism Tower. They outsourced the deadly risk of containing a nuclear-level threat to freelance trainers, and the tragedy of the game's ending just confirms the city's doom. After the player and rival stop the hyper-rogue Anji Floette catastrophe, they use their rank A wish not to resolve the economy or destroy the monopoly, but to establish the infinite Zeta A Royale. Congratulations! They just institutionalized the violence. By setting all trainers to rank infinity and expanding the battle zones, the protagonists effectively declared that the war economy is now permanent. The City of Light has officially accepted that its only remaining industry is eternal combat. Also, if Corsarico represent the corporate monopoly, then Jacinthe and her society of battle connoisseurs represent the decadent oligarchy, operating out of the luxurious Hotel Richissime. The SBC function less like a social club and more like a neo-feudal court. While the working class bleeds in the Zeta A Royale for basic subsistence, Jacinthe's clique treats violence as a boutique hobby, hoarding prize medals to maintain an artificial scarcity in the economy. Furthermore, Jacinthe's use of Jacinthe zones, military-grade hard-light barriers to physically imprison the protagonist until they entertain her, proves that the state's monopoly on violence has completely dissolved. In a functioning economy, only the government can detain citizens. But in Lumiose, any billionaire with a holographic projector can take you hostage for a dinner party. Her ultimate goal? To rename the metropolis Jacinthe City reveals a pathological narcissism where public infrastructure is viewed merely as an extension of her ego. Jacinthe isn't the villain in the traditional sense, but she is the terrifying end state of unchecked wealth. So, if the redevelopment is destructive, the elites are corrupt, and the government is going broke, who is actually running the city? Enter the Rust Syndicate. Initially presented as the Yakuza villains running predatory loan schemes, a deeper look reveals that they are the only functioning arm of Lumiose left. The game calls it organized crime. I call it privatized infrastructure maintenance. For example, remember those sewers clogged with mega crystals and sludge? Corsarico isn't cleaning that. The city council isn't cleaning that. the rough syndicate is. Yes, they utilize a debt trap business model to conscript labor like the rival character to perform essential city sanitation and safety operations. Corbeau, the syndicate boss, explicitly states that if the city falls, they would have no clients left to exploit. This is a classic example of enlightened self-interest. When the Prism Tower transformed into the hyper-rogue Angie Floed and threatens to level the city, it isn't the police who hold the line, it's the syndicate, mobilizing as a defense force to secure Centrico Plaza. In the post-game, they effectively replace Corsadico as the crisis management team. They pivot from loan sharking into what they call a civic think tank, researching the spatial distortions and developing logistics to navigate hyperspace in the game's DLC. We have reached a point of state failure where the mafia are providing better public safety and R&D than the actual government. In political philosophy, legitimacy belongs to whoever can provide security. And by that metric, the Rust Syndicate are the legitimate government of Lumiose City. Yeah, and that is a terrifying indicator of the collapsed economy. At the end of the game, Jet effectively steps down after admitting she concealed the threat of the Prism Tower. In a sane world, the board of directors would appoint a crisis manager with decades of infrastructure experience. Instead, Jet appoints the protagonist's rival, a literal teenager, as the president of this multi-billion-dollar, multinational conglomerate. I need you to grasp the sheer terrifying insanity of this decision. This isn't just volatility, it is an economic death wish signed in red ink. We are talking about an offshore conglomerate that controls the power, water, and now containment barriers for a major metropolis. And they handed it off to a 15-year-old. The game tries to frame this as a passing of the torch, but economically it is corporate malpractice at its finest. We know from the early game that this rival character couldn't even manage a small debt to a hotel without resorting to loan sharks. If they lack the financial literacy to manage a hotel bill, how are they managing the balance sheet of an entire city-state? We don't exactly know whether Corsadico is publicly traded, but the moment that announcement was made, Corsadico's stock would have gone to zero. Investors hate uncertainty, and teenage CEO with zero experience is the definition of uncertainty. This ensures that no external capital will ever invest in Lumiose ever again. The appointment seals the city's fate as an economic pariah, cut off from global finance forever. So, is the good ending even real? To answer that, we don't need lore or theories, we just need a history book. Real-world economics prove that when a city built on a mono-economy loses its anchor, the result is never a pivot, it is a violent collapse. We saw it in California's Salton Sea, where a toxic asset destroyed a resort destination into a poisonous ghost town. We saw it in Detroit, where a donut effect proved that you cannot rebuild an economy around a hollowed-out center. And we see it in Lumiose City, where at the end of the game, Prism Tower is obliterated into a shell of its former self after Zygarde defeats Angie. This poor city has already suffered enough, and now its one tourist draw card is already an overrun wild zone. It's truly a disturbing conclusion. The game credits my role with happy music, but the economic reality is grim. Lumiose hasn't been saved, it has simply entered its Rust Belt era. No pun intended. But that's just my theory. I want to know what you philosophers think. Would you live in Lumiose City under CEO Tawny/Urbane? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the economics of the Pokemon world, you're going to love this channel. This may be my first ever video, but the goal of Philosophy is going to be to tackle philosophical, economic, or political concepts and apply them to video games or other media. So hit that subscribe button if that sounds interesting. I'm JetX, this is Philosophy, and I'll see you in the next one.